Welcome to another episode of Fresh Corduroy. I'm your host, Craig Zolan. When skiers talk about the future of the sport, the conversation usually starts with snow conditions, lift lines, or ticket prices. But behind every ski day is a much bigger set of forces shaping how and whether ski areas operate at all. Today's guest sits right at the center of that picture. Mike Reitzell is the president of the National Ski Areas Association, the trade organization representing ski resorts across North America. If you've ever wondered how ski areas navigate climate variability, labor challenges, infrastructure investment, safety, government regulation, or the long-term sustainability of the sport, this conversation pulls back the curtain. In this episode, we talk about the business and policy realities facing ski areas today, how resorts think about the skier experience beyond just terrain, and what changes skiers may notice or not notice in the years ahead. We also discuss the less visible work happening behind the scenes to keep ski areas viable, safe, and accessible in an increasingly complex operating environment. This is a conversation about skiing, but also about economics, policy, community, and the future of winter sports in North America. Now, let's get some fresh corduroy. Mike, welcome to Fresh Corduroy.
Craig, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
My pleasure. Good to have you. Before we dig into what the National Ski Areas Association is all about, let's hear about the Mike skiing origin story. Where and when did you get started skiing?
Well, I'd say I was probably maybe somewhat traditional in the way that a lot of people ski and they learn to ski. You know, my mom took me skiing when I was 5. We went to local mountains for, to start with. I'll say local. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, so we were 2-3 hours away from stuff. But we would start really with day trips, and I started going to Bear Valley, which is a little more in Central California, down from the Tahoe areas. So it's Bear Valley and Kirkwood to start with. Started like anybody else, just got some lessons, got some maybe some pole smacks in the butt by mom, trying to learn. I know what that's like now with kids, so I understand that. But yeah, I really, I always loved it as a kid. And then as I grew older, it was more about how opportunities came to me in some ways. Like I kept going. I had a buddy in high school whose dad loved to go skiing, so he'd take me up in high school. And then the real key, when I got to college, like first week on campus at USC, which, I'm Southern California, and I'm thinking, well, the skiing thing's not going to be a huge part of this college experience, was my original thought. And first week on campus, I'm walking down just, between classes or something, and they had a lot of the booths set up for clubs and things like that. And I see a banner that says USC ski team. And I'm like, what? That's very cool. So I stop at the booth, check it out. Turns out they go to Mammoth every other weekend. They race, and that was something I had not experienced yet, but I was like, I'm joining. And then turns out that my next class was a French class, and I meet a buddy there who's from Mammoth. And we both talked and we saw each other. I think the first meeting they had, I was like, hey, I know you. And he drove me to Mammoth in December that year, basically taught me how to race. Spent 4 years at USC where skiing was an absolute complete part of everything I did. Every other weekend, scheduling classes around skiing, not always the other way around. Yeah, that was really kind of the Kickstarter to do it just being, completely part of my life.
It's funny you should say you were on the ski team at USC. I was explaining college racing to someone recently, and at the NCAA level, it's a small group of varsity teams, and but then at the USCSA level, I said, there's 150, 200 teams, and UCLA and USC both have teams, and they looked at me quizzically and said, "Really?" I was like, yep, really. Now they're not training midweek, I don't think, but
We frankly weren't training at all. We would show up, we'd ski a lot, and then we're like, all right, now we got to go race. So how are we going to do that? No coaches. Like we had our coaches were our teammates that had raced in high school. And I will note we did beat UCLA every year I was there. We didn't do so well in football, so I have to hold the ski team part over
got it.
things.
That sounds like a great intro and background. Yes, we're reminisce about our mothers teaching us both to ski and how that felt back in the day. But let's move on to other topics. So let's talk about the what National Ski Areas Association is and what its role is. I mean, I want you, for the uninitiated, someone who's just a recreational skier, how would you describe the NSAA?
NSAA is a trade association. One thing I came to learn joining the trade association world about 12 years ago is there's a lot of us out there. And so it's almost every industry out there has some sort of organization that represents their general interests. And that's what NSA does. We're a 501c6 nonprofit organization that represents over 315 ski areas around the country. We got members that go outside of the U.S. borders as well. So along with the ski areas, we have supplier members. So those are the members that are supplying ski areas with things, when you're thinking about lifts, snowmaking, that type of thing. Those are the bigger ones. And then, everything else from there all the way down to the walkie-talkies that Ski Patrol uses. So they're all members of the association. And really, I think our goal overall is, how do we act on behalf of the greater ski industry, where it's more of a benefit to have a single organization over each individual ski area going out and trying to do the same things. So we have relationships on a federal level with the Forest Service, with the legislature, any organization that really, or any government entity that interacts with our members on a pretty regular basis. We have those relationships and can really kind of carry the industry message with them. And then in addition to that, we do a lot of other things as well. Education for the industry on many levels, and then really just bringing them together to have this unified industry voice.
And how did you make your way into the association business? You talked about there's many associations. I know a bit about your background. You're a fellow recovering attorney. So would like to hear about your career path and how you wound up at NSAA.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, I'm happy with how it's all unfolded. I mean, I went to law school. I had a degree in broadcast journalism, which I took and put it into law school. When I went to go work for a law firm, even really interview before I was working for them, one of the law firms I interviewed with happened to represent ski areas in California. And that was certainly not a common thing. And I probably was one of the very few folks out there that really keyed into that as a great thing for a law firm to have. And so sure enough, got an offer at that firm in San Francisco. Started in San Francisco, and after a couple years, moved to the Lake Tahoe office of that firm, which was a very good way to help me get into those ski industry clients. So I worked in Tahoe for 7 years, representing all the ski areas. Went back to San Francisco, but continued to stay in that aspect of my practice. I basically wouldn't give it up because I don't know how much I would have loved or appreciated being a lawyer if I couldn't represent an industry that I really cared about. And then in 2015, an opportunity came up for Ski California, or what is now Ski California, the California Ski Industry Association, to potentially replace the only person who'd ever had the executive director or president role in that organization. He'd been there for 40 years, Bob Roberts. And I mean, a true dream job, frankly. And I was offered that in 2015, and did that for 10 years or thereabouts, about 9. And honestly, I thought it was very possible that that would be my last job. Like, I mean, I didn't see any reason that I would want to go anywhere else. I loved representing the ski areas in California and Nevada. Just, it was an amazing job. And then in 2024, somewhat unexpectedly, the NSAA role came open. I certainly obviously thought, okay, well, this could be a role for me. I had many people say, what are you thinking? And so I decided to apply, and was offered the position in September of 24. Just another position I just couldn't pass up. I mean, it was the opportunity to lead the entire ski industry. It's, I wake up every day and get to think, what can I do for the industry? It's awesome. I mean, it's a great place to be in. I love the people in the industry, and man, when you're passionate about something as I am when it comes to skiing and snowboarding, being able to apply that every day of your career is absolutely amazing.
So if there was a day in the life, or a usual day, I should say, at NSA, what does that look like? And what are the different activities that you and the organization are working on a day-to-day basis?
It's interesting because we are very cyclical in the sense of I'd say cyclical and not seasonal as much as people might think. We're cyclical in that we have events that we do year round. Almost all of them, if not all of them, frankly, have some sort of educational component to them. So we are essentially always planning for upcoming events. So whether that's the actual planning of the event, the logistics, or it's working on the education, and we actually provide a lot of that. Our staff does provide a lot of the education that we do offer. And then we just have various departments. I mean, our government relations department is essentially working, year round on what's going on in the legislature, what's going on with the Forest Service, how are the things going on in our government affecting us as an industry. So they have things popping up at all times. We have committees on our various subjects, whether that be the public lands that we work on. Um, our economics. I mean, there's so many things that we have. Each one of our staff members are involved with that and working with members. We have membership that we're working on year round. So it's all things we work on. And as a team, there's a total of 17 of us, and we really are. We have our roles, we have our departments, but we are really working across a cross section of everything we do at NSA on a daily basis.
So before we hit record, you said the topics that we could cover are immense, and we could go on for a long time. So hopefully we'll be able to pull on some of those the threads of each of those topics at least a little bit as we progress the conversation. But let's, I guess, talk about first the sort of state of the ski industry. As the trade organization, obviously the economic impact and the sort of the how it's doing as a business is probably core to the association's role, which is if the industry withers and dies, that's not a good thing, right? So, what would you say the current state of the industry is?
Well, first I'll say that is really NSA's role, is having our finger on the pulse of the industry from, whether it's economics, how are our skier visits doing? Who's going skiing? Why are they skiing? Why aren't they skiing? We do a lot of research on all of those things. So we do certainly keep track of that. And overall, what I'd say right now is the ski industry is in a very healthy place overall. We're settling right now into, I think, where we are currently versus the last, say, 5 years, where things were, I don't know if volatile is the right word. It's more that just the COVID impact was such a big deal for us. I think about when COVID happened. I mean, it was it was spring of a ski season. So we weren't done yet by any means. But we had gotten in the vast majority of our season. So it didn't really, it didn't crush that season. I mean, if that would have happened in, say, November, we would have lost an entire season, most likely, of skiing and snowboarding. So that allowed us to prepare for what was coming next. I think we did, as an industry, an amazing job of that. And it really set us up for what was, over the last several years, this spike in demand for outdoor recreation, because people weren't going places. They were wanting to get outside, and we were a direct beneficiary of that. And I think that it helped new people that maybe were taking it back up, realize, wait a second, this is amazing. This is a fantastic sport. This is a great industry. So we're coming off of all of that right now, and we're in a place where we're looking at ourselves as, okay, we don't have that anymore. There isn't that boost or difference that happened during COVID. So we're taking a fresh look at ourselves, and we looked at last season, 24-25, somewhat interestingly, as what we would probably fit in more as, I don't think any season is normal anymore, but it was, in the sense that we had pretty good snowfall across the country. We had pretty good visitation, evened out. So it gave us an opportunity to look at our industry and say, this is where we are. There wasn't some crazy outlier last year that really was saying, well, we had to explain certain things. We could just say, I think this is where we are as an industry. It was our second largest visitation on record, so that was great to see. But that did tell us, hey, we're in a good place visitation wise. People love skiing and snowboarding. We'd seen a lot of innovation at our resorts, adapting to what happened over the last 5 years, changing their operations to make sure that we were in a good place. And so right now, I think we're just in a healthy place, and we're really turning our eye to what's next. I think really is where we are.
So what is next?
Well, I think this year is one of those years. I'm sure we'll get into some talk about tickets and passes and all of
Yeah.
that. And we have certainly consolidation and larger companies, smaller, independent. But I'm seeing, I'll just as a point, very recently, Vail Resorts announced a bit of a new ticketing effort for day tickets. And we're really trying to, I think, find that next place for us as an industry, where we had this major shift over the last almost 20 years with season passes. And we're like, okay, now we became this season pass driven model that we've really focused on. And that spurred a lot. That spurred, frankly, Alterra, the Indy Pass, resorts coming together, not necessarily resorts that are under the same ownership group, but just wanting to get together and say, hey, is there a way we can partner to make our experience better, to make the guest experience better? So we're seeing a lot of that happening, and then a lot of innovation in technology as well. I mean, our industry embracing that. I mean, we are fundamentally all about skiing and snowboarding. That's where we begin, is the mountain, and the mountains themselves don't change that often. And sometimes that falls into us too, that we don't really want to change. But I think over the last 5 years, we've watched, with the change in technology, what guests expect out of technology, that we are embracing that a bit more. So you get a lot of that when you come to our.
So let's talk about the evolution of the season pass dominance, and also the called major versus major corporate entities that are holding a lot of ski areas, Alterra, Vail Resorts, and juxtaposed to the small mom and pop local areas that are more often than not closer to urban centers. I think of it, I'm in the East Coast. I think of the smaller areas that are closer, close to New York City or close to Boston, as opposed to the quote destination resorts. You serve all of them, but there's clearly big differences between the corporates and the smaller, family owned and operated ski areas. How do you serve both? And are there trends that are unique to one group versus the other?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, serving all of them is really a key of the organization. And I think where it starts is recognizing that it all needs to work together for everyone to be successful. And I think all of the ski areas out there, whether it's an independent ski area, whether it's a large company, I think they recognize that importance. Like they understand that we have, as you mentioned, even these local mountains where someone just lives nearby and maybe they haven't learned how to ski, but they're close and they're going to go to the closest place and they're going to learn to ski there. And it's key for that ski area to help them learn. And whether they end up being a skier for that local place for the rest of their life, or that transitions them to say, hey, I want to go other places. I want to go to a destination resort. I want to get a pass that allows me to go to all these places. That whole ecosystem has to work together. And I think that we as an industry understand that the individual organizations, companies, again, small or large, understand that. And so that's really where it starts. And then, I think it's about this variety that we can provide. I mean, one thing I've noticed in taking this position, even though I was essentially a region before this, is the regionality of our country. And when it comes to skiing and snowboarding, like you can't apply the same principles in every region. They're very different. In the Northeast, things are totally different than they are in, say, frankly, any other part of the country. So you really have to think about how it works in each place. And then our individual ski areas in those places have to think about it. Like, you are closer to major cities in the Northeast, whereas out west in California, you got huge amount of people in the Bay Area, but they all have to drive roughly at least 3 hours to get to those mountains. So it does change the dynamic of how they all need to work. But I mean, back to kind of this large and small and independent. Again, they all have to recognize that things are different for them versus a larger resort. But they can all succeed together. And frankly, I always think back. I had one of ski area operators in the Tahoe area who had some Vail resorts around him, and he said to me, he's like, I used to get a little frustrated, and we were different, and I felt like they were trying to take this or take these people. He's like, but then I realized when they did well, so did we. And so it really showed that we all work well together. It's just about having a good ski season.
Yeah, I mean, the old adage, a rising tide lifts all boats, is, what you ultimately want. And as that operator, would attest to, that when the larger organizations do well, so do the smaller. But, I guess the question is whether or not I think there was a period of time where these passes, the Epic and Icon Pass, were coming online, relatively new. The fear was that the smaller, I call them mom and pop, but the independently owned mountains were going to suffer. That people would find value in that, pass product, and pay for them, sign up for them, however I want to say subscribe, but that's not the right word either. And as a result, skier visits at the smaller areas would suffer. And yet, I think they're offering very different products, and they're different guest types. Not completely, but if there's a Venn diagram, there's a portion of it's overlapping, but it's not completely. How do you, as the industry association, perhaps broker the thought process around that? I don't know what if anything you do, but clearly I think there is more recognition that the smaller areas, as you described, are the feeder programs for the big mountains. The young skier or new to skiing starts out usually at their local mountain and then graduates to bigger mountains, over time, or makes, Vail or Steamboat, to pick, one from each family, as their vacation resort. So how do you think about that, and how do you build programs, to the extent that you do that, or within the industry, to facilitate that?
Yeah, and again, I think that we've evolved to a point where they understand where they fit in the industry, what they need to do. Like, of course, I think what the Epic Pass starting in 2008 did was certainly cause a lot of reaction and a lot of, hey, we need to maybe rethink what our model looks like because of the impact that's going to have. Now, I'll certainly say from from someone who grew up looking at season passes and thinking of them as not very attainable for someone like myself. And I still, I skied a lot of days, but in order to get one of those passes, I mean, you had to allocate a fair amount of cash up front that most people didn't do. And then you got to ski like 30 to 40 days if you wanted to make it work. So that shift to this pass that really grabbed a lot more people I mean, it was industry changing for sure. And I think most of us that love to ski would argue that now, with that pass, with Icon, with others coming online, it's cheaper than ever to be a part of the ski industry, and a part of skiing and snowboarding as part of your life. That you're going to do it enough every year that it's really important to you. And so that's way more accessible. And so I just think it's important to think about that and and what that did, I think, was cause everybody to just evolve to where we are now. Now, NSAA, we're very focused on the things that affect everybody or can help everybody. Like, I like to say that there are very few things in this industry that we compete on. Like, now, in the public, you're going to see that, you know, every ski area is trying to work to draw people into them. They're going to market to whoever they market to. They're going to create whatever products that they want to create that will drive visitation to their ski areas. And that's not really things that we get a part of. We leave that to them. We certainly provide them with the research, with what are the barriers to entry of the sport applied in different parts of the country that will certainly help our members make those decisions about what they're going to do with passes and pricing and partnerships and all of that. But at NSA, we focus very much on what we can do together, what we can collaborate on. Oh, like I said, when you've got 113 ski areas on public lands, that's, 1/3 of our membership that we're able to work with the Forest Service to make sure that that's, all the things that go along with that are going to be the best possible it can be for our areas. Safety is, my background is a bit in that, so it's a huge thing for me, and I love to see us come together on safety, like that we as an industry think about what can we do so we're giving that guest a consistent message. Whether you're at resort A, B, or C, you're seeing the same things when it comes to safety, because we don't compete on safety, we don't compete on sustainability. Like, we all believe that's just a massive part of who we are as an industry. So I think we bring our whole membership together, large, small, independent, medium size, whatever it may be. We bring them together on the issues that are affecting all of them. And I think that's where NSA best serves everyone.
Got it. Um, I'm going to move to climate and some of those other topics you just mentioned, but you mentioned that New England or Northeast is unique unto itself. How so? I'm curious.
Well, I've had to learn a lot about this, being a West Coast guy my whole life, and I've now gone out to the East a few times. A couple interesting things I've learned. I've learned that North and South much easier in the East. Then you try to go East West, and you're going around. And so you look at a map, you can, even the one here above
Yeah.
me, and there's the section that is the Northeast, and it's a call out because of how many resorts you have to put in one spot. You have to make it bigger to get to everyone. So there's a lot. So they're close to all these cities. So you get schools in these areas where, you have a number of schools that can just head up to the local mountain. And that's also true in the Midwest as well, where it's cold and snowy, all the way down to where you have larger populations to pull from. Or also, I'd say Midwest or Northeast, for the most part, you're looking at, smaller ski areas, and they're all over the place, and it's great to have that you're not driving 3 hours every time you want to go to a ski area. You can get a great experience 20 minutes down the road, 30 minutes down the road. Um, but it's a different experience. I mean, that's what's actually really cool about our country is that the way we've even regionalized our members into places, every single one of those regions offers something totally different, and that's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, having skied and grown up and skied in New England all my life, one of the unique things that I always found once I started traveling was there's no such thing as the day lodge at a lot of Western mountains. Like, okay, where do I put my boots on? Where where do I leave my sneakers, et cetera, et cetera. Like that is the every ski area. I can't think of a single one that doesn't have a lodge where you put your equipment on. Whereas in out west, they just don't exist.
You take them on and off at your car, man. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. They got a tailgate. Um, let's talk about climate, which, as you pointed out, is going to impact every single ski area in the country, or around the globe for that matter. Um, how do you think about that as the trade organization, and how do the member mountains and companies deal with it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, obviously a very close issue to us. One we as an industry jumped on very early. Our public policy director, Geraldine Link, has been with us since the 90s, and in the early 2000s, she kicked off essentially a charter on sustainability in the industry. Like, hey, this is something we need to be thinking about. We need to be paying attention to. It's very important for us. And so we've really been involved with it, for 20 plus years. And uh, it's evolved over time how we as an organization look at it. I think it really started with, what can we do? What do we do in our own operations to be more efficient? That will allow us to say, hey, what we're doing is going to be helpful for our environment. I mean, at the end of the day, we are businesses, so we have to run lifts. We have to do all the things it takes to run a ski area. But I think over time, we've all evolved to, okay, how do we do that in the most efficient way possible, that we're being good to the earth, frankly, and being stewards of the land that we're on. In my career, I've seen that out of our members. It's gone from, oh yeah, we have to think about that, to every single project incorporates some aspect of sustainability. And I think we've also evolved in that, well, let's make these changes, and we'll be able to show what we're doing, to realizing that this issue is so much bigger than us. I mean, we are if every ski area tomorrow was, net zero emissions, it'd be like a tiny drop in the bucket of what we know we need to accomplish globally. So I think what we hopefully tried to become more of is to be advocates on behalf of climate solutions, and really just help educate our members on what they can do. And we've evolved that to this. We have two programs, Sustainable Slopes and the Climate Challenge, that we put out to our members. And a lot of that means, here are the 10 different things or areas that you as an organization can go after to support being, someone that actually cares about the climate and wants to make a big change. But it's a really challenging topic, I think, because, you know, I think we have people that are very much, this is the way it's going to be, or I even hear you take it another side of it, where The media always comes to us and says, shorter ski seasons, this, and they give all these things that are happening. I said, well, if you look at it, actually, because of what we've done as an industry from a mitigation, from an adaptability standpoint, something we're really good at, we're actually experiencing longer seasons in some places because of what we're doing. But underlying fact there is we know that there's just the volatility is something we are going to have to deal with. We're dealing with it right now on the West Coast. It's just something we're going to have to deal with on a year-to-year basis and work to bring more people to the table so we can make some type of impact globally.
Yeah, there are two components there. One is what the ski areas themselves can do, and as you point out, even if they became, uh, net zero in terms of emissions, it's a small drop in the bucket. But I just had recently on the podcast the CEO of the snowmaking equipment manufacturer Techno Alpine, and talking about the efficiency gains of modern snowmaking equipment. And in the past, I also had the manager of grooming at Killington and Pico and talk about hybrid snowcats. They're making these investments. Yeah, they have climate, positive benefits, but it's also a business, right? And they are, driving energy costs down is good for business. And so, 80% reduction in, say, energy costs associated with snowmaking. Well, most ski areas can get behind that if they can make the capital expenditure. So there's that component, which I assume, from your perspective, is universal, essentially across the industry in terms of the desire to move to be more energy efficient and carbon neutral because of the business impact that it can provide.
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies. I mean, you probably would talk to, one ski area owner or operator, and they might say, number one is we actually want to be a more energy efficient business for the environment. And then you might talk to somebody else that says, well, yeah, I'll make that decision because it's gonna save me a bunch of money in operating my business. Both things can be true, and both things do happen. I mean, I really do credit the manufacturers out there, our suppliers, that I mean, they really have strived to make their equipment as energy efficient as possible. And it's great to see that. I mean, snowmaking, I mean, for the most part, you're just moving water around as opposed to, I think some people might think of it as like, wow, you're using a lot. Well, most of it goes back to the to the watershed. So there is even a component there where it's beneficial. I think it's great that it's good for business, and it's great that it continues to help us move towards our energy efficiency goals. I was actually just reviewing our Sustainable Slopes annual report just this morning, and I was pretty shocked at the numbers. I mean, just the number of our areas that are, you know, aiming towards a net zero emissions goal is like over 80%. I mean, it's just phenomenal that we make this effort. And it's one of those where we're just modeling after each other. I mean, certain places started doing it. We started certainly promoting that and then having education on it. And then other folks, yeah, whether it was because of sustainable purposes or because, wow, this is really going to benefit my business, they've really taken that on as something that we do from the majority of our areas.
Yeah. And so that's I'll call it the industry and ski area perspective. And then as you mentioned, you need a little bit more help outside of just the ski industry to really effectuate change. And I think back to conversation I had on the podcast with Senator John Curtis of Utah about one who was a member of the ski and snowboard caucus when he was in the House. And we talked about climate advocacy. We also talked about public lands, which hopefully we'll get to. How, depending on your political affiliation, climate can be a 4-letter word, or it can be, the Holy Grail. And the challenge there is to articulate or come up with a message that resonates with everybody, regardless of where they sit on the political spectrum. and because at the end of the day, climate is somewhat of an existential threat to ski areas and their livelihood, and all host of other outdoor recreation, among other things,
Yeah.
industries. Um, at the end of the day, we all know like insurance is increasing as a result of climate changes. There's there'll be a lot of different things. So have you had to tailor your message to in your advocacy efforts depending upon A, who you're speaking to, or B, who's in power at any given point in time, and who your audience is?
Short answer to that is yes, but zoom out into how you talk to anybody. It's always better to know how you're going to be successful with that particular person. And so I think that we, are as an organization smart enough to understand, who we're talking to, like who is it that we're talking to, and what goals are we trying to accomplish. Senator Curtis is a great example. I mean, he's sort of that person that we've gone to and can talk in any way we want, because he actually understands the importance of climate solutions. He understands the importance of trying to be bipartisan on the issue, which is what we really push as well. So we know we can go, into his office and speak to him really in whatever way we feel is going to be helpful for the future for us. And he understands that, and he's not going to he's certainly not one of those that says, whoa, wait, did you say climate change? I think you might have meant something else. Not like that, but you do have to think about who your audience is. There's no question about it that different administrations are going to prioritize different issues. We have a whole host of them across the spectrum. Of what we might want to talk about more of, depending on the administration. So we do certainly deal with that, but we really appreciate someone like Senator Curtis that wants to be bipartisan. There's a conservative climate caucus. Like it's great that they're like, hey, we do need to talk about this. These are issues affecting our state. Senator Curtis knows this is an issue that affects Utah, so he wants to address it. And there's lots of legislators out there like that, and we've found, we've been very successful, I think, talking to both sides of the aisle on the issue. But moving the needle is on this topic can be very challenging.
Yeah, and we don't have to be perfect. At the end of the day, we just need to continue to advance and make progress. I think also on the podcast was Aaron Sprague of Protect Our Winters, and we talked about how, look, if we strive for perfect, it's going to be a long time till we get there, and we should just try and make incremental change. And hopefully, my audience doesn't think this is a boring topic, but I think it's important to our enjoyment of the sport. There have been. Look, I remember a winter when my son was playing soccer at the base of the mountain because there was no snow on the hill to actually go ski. And so that I don't want that to happen again anytime soon.
Hey, I'll say, tomorrow is supposed to be my kids' first ski team days. And instead, they're doing a bit of a mountain scavenger hunt because there's not enough snow to do it. And I think it's hard for anyone to think, most of the stuff we're looking at that's really scary is we'll call it far enough off in the future that no one is staring it right in the face. And I think those are the hardest things to plan and prepare for. But if you've got somebody that knows what they're talking about telling you, you need to plan and prepare for this, we need to do it. And I look at, fire is a good example of this and how hard that's hit places out west. But it's getting better in places like California, because now we've done all of these things to better prepare and be ready for it. And sure, things are still going to happen, but I think we need to start looking at climate in that way, that I don't ever want to see the projections they've got for 2050 and 2100 because if those kinds of things happen, my kids, and if my kids have kids, they're the ones that are going to be dealing with it. And I'd hate to think that they have to go to northern Canada, to really enjoy this.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned public lands and dealing with the Forest Service, among others. That's predominantly a more Western oriented issue in the East. Again, saying New England's unique in a variety of regards. There really is no U.S. Forest Service land or BLM land, although some areas are in state forests, so there is some government interaction. But what is your work there look like, and what does it do for the industry?
Yeah, I know it's a third of our member ski areas, but it's a pretty large swath of the visitation and the land, and really it's about keeping a very good partnership with the Forest Service. Again, I need to kind of credit Geraldine Link on this. She has been the one that's held that relationship between NSAA and the Forest Service for the last 25 plus years. And it's a great partnership. I mean, first thing we recognize is that we as ski areas potentially have different priorities than the Forest Service has, or sometimes we also have they have their challenges, and if we bury our head in the sand and don't recognize that they have challenges, and vice versa, we're never going to have a good partnership. And what I've seen over the last decade or so is just that recognition that, hey, we've got our challenges. Cool. Let's come together and figure out how we can be great partners. And they've really done that with us, and we've done that with them. Just a few months ago, I was in DC, and I signed an updated memorandum of understanding with the Forest Service that outlines what our partnership is, and what we do to work together. The Forest Service cares very much about recreation. It's a big piece of what public lands are for. And we're a very small piece of that. We are less than 1/2 of 1%, is what we are in terms of the land that we take up. But we also contribute the most to the Forest Service as well. And so they recognize that. They recognize the importance of recreation and getting out on those public lands. So they've just been a great partner. And we, I think, have developed what I think is just a tremendous relationship.
So, what are some of those concrete partnership examples in terms of the either the industry as a whole contributing to the Forest Service something, or individual areas contributing or partnering with the Forest Service?
Well, I think from a basic standpoint, if people aren't always aware of this, we have these long-term leases with the Forest Service, and that's what these are all based upon, having a special use permit for operation on the land. So it's this established acceptance that, hey, we're here, we're going to improve these lands, and we're going to provide this public recreation to the guest. And obviously the ski area is mostly in control over everything that happens, but we talk to the Forest Service about what we're going to do. We have master development plans out in the future of like, hey, what might we even become in the future? So when we do bring those plans to the Forest Service, there's okay, yeah, you guys have already provided this to us. We know you were doing that, and then just working together to make sure how we're operating is in conjunction with the best use of public lands. We have other issues where they have staffing challenges. We work with them to how do we make it so we're working with people that really work together to understand how ski areas operate. So they help provide people to us that can do that. We work on, I think we know that housing is a challenge, and so we really tried to work with them on how do we come up with better housing, not only for our employees but for their employees to be there up on the mountain where people want to be. And so those are just kind of a couple of examples of really how we work with them. But it's on I mean, it's, I don't want to necessarily a daily basis, but I'd say, it's at least weekly that we're talking to them about how we can be, better partners and to be the best stewards of that public land that we can be.
That's great. And you provided me the perfect segue into the next topic, which is housing, among other, and say workforce. Housing in mountain towns is challenging. I mean, housing in the U.S. More broadly is challenging these days and expensive. But mountain towns, I think that issue is a bit exacerbated. How does NSA get involved and sort of facilitate more housing, particularly for workforce, but presumably more broadly for the town community, if you will?
I'd say probably two main ways that we do. It tends to be a bit more of a local issue. So you're going to get, I think we have regional associations as well. They're not under our, control, but they certainly are. They're members of NSA. They are partners with NSA. So those local things can go through a lot of them. But I'd say from our perspective, it's one, how do we work with the government to to deal with this challenge? I think that's one way. And then the other way is probably just working with our members to think of solutions to how we deal with the challenges. I think the biggest aspect of this was, we were already, I think, trending toward, having challenges with affordable housing, having challenges with our workforce finding good housing, but COVID just accelerated it like nothing we could have expected. And so you figure we were already trending to, wow, it's getting a bit more expensive to live in these mountain communities. They're a pretty cool place to be. And then everybody flocked to them around COVID and really changed the dynamic to where, I mean, I think in some ways, I think our ski areas felt, I don't want to say helpless, but how do you deal with this right away? We went from, you were always looking for some of your entry level employees, and how do you help house them? How do you direct them to places that they can stay? Their seasonals, things of that nature. How do you handle that? And we would, as an industry, I think each one of our areas had ways of dealing with that. Again, it varies tremendously on the type of ski area where they're located. It was now affecting a lot of the workforce, where you had a family of four of someone that had worked at the ski area for 15 years was looking at this either rent increase that they couldn't handle or having the house they're renting sold out from, under them. And now they're looking going, wow, I'm now going to have to pay twice as much, three times as much as I had to pay for housing. So it just was one of those things that I think came just too quickly to be able to just say, okay, here's how we're going to deal with it. And I think we as an organization just continue to try to work with our member resorts. I think I'm seeing more, they've prioritized this. They know their local communities, they know the leaders there, and they're trying to figure out the best ways to deal with it. And again, depending on where you are, the tape can be a lot redder than others when it comes to bringing along new housing. That's in essence what we need.
Right. Um, as part of the NSA's core mission, you talked about a lot of education for the members. Is there idea sharing across both, not just regions, but across the country in terms of this idea worked for us? I don't know if this is a good or bad example, but I know somewhere, some resort in Colorado, I think, bought an old enclosed motel and used it for employee housing, and then had a bus and shuttle that brought them to the area, which was maybe 15, 20 miles away. But things like that could work elsewhere, ideas shared at these sessions. And are there examples of collaboration, or just someone, maybe you don't know that over a cup of coffee or a beer at the end of the session, somebody shared an idea and it actually took root somewhere else? But I assume that's part of what you're trying to facilitate.
I mean, that's just frankly a great example of exactly who we are. that is what we do. We will, we have folks. Earl Celine runs our education, and that's the kind of thing. Something like that comes up. Okay, what's a current issue, and he'll go out and find someone who can speak to that. The example you gave, frankly, I know is common throughout the country, where you'll identify a property, sometimes a lot more local than 15, 20 minutes away, something just down the street, where it's an old hotel, and we'll come in and refurbish it and take it over and make it employee housing. I know many examples of that occurring. So yeah, we'll bring somebody in who's probably put something online. I know in Aspen they built something in basalt that was for all employees, and it addresses other challenges when they did that, like childcare. Is That's not just a ski industry.
Right.
That was a national issue, of course. Um, but yeah, idea sharing is basically who we are. I mean, we hear stuff and we think, okay, where do we fit that in? What does that fit into? We have an HR committee, and in the HR committee, that's the kind of thing that would come up. How do we help our employees? So that is exactly who NSA is. Find out information, find out something that's affecting us as an industry, find the person who can speak to it best, and bring them to one of our events so we can spread that word better.
That's great. In the few moments that we have left, let's turn to the innovation in the future. What is where do you see the industry going? I think you're talking about climate. I've seen personally, ski areas trying to become, more four season places, and utilize the property and facilities as much as possible. I imagine there's some innovation going on there, to whether it's a downhill bike park or zip lines and ropes courses, or you name your outdoor activity. What are the other sorts of things that the industry as a whole is innovating on?
Well, I'd say, yeah, summer is such a great one that show that 80% of our ski areas have summer operations now. And it also has incrementally become a larger piece of their revenue. And so that helps in a number of ways. It helps to bring people as year-round employees. It's much better to have that reliance on year-round employees than each season needing to bring more new people on. So that's been one area they've done great. Yeah, I think that it's more in that sense. I think the suppliers that are coming up with these innovations when it comes to the activities that can be offered, and then our areas being able to say, like, yeah, I want to do that. I mean, you can make snow in 80-degree temperatures. I don't think that's going to be necessarily the future
Doesn't stick
of
around
the
very
industry,
long.
but
Yeah.
yeah, that is a thing. I mean, when you talk about innovation, I mean, I just see we've shifted a bit, snowmaking being one of those, where I remember when I was younger and I'd go to a ski area, kind of like I'd go to an amusement park and be like, what's the new ride? And like, what's the new lift? And that's still, of course, we've seen in the last 5 years, a very big push to start seeing more changeover lift infrastructure that's out there. But the heavier investment, or at least heavy investment, has been on snowmaking, and how do we innovate to that to make sure we're giving our guests more of a set season. Like, hey, we know when we're going to be able to offer you skiing and snowboarding because of these investments we've made in high tech snowmaking. So like the on hill stuff is interesting from the standpoint of, that's all just infrastructure of what we can do so you can have a great ski and ride experience. Because I think what our resorts want to be able to offer is like, hey, skiing and snowboarding have been the same in the sense of, you go on the mountain and you get to just basically have that feeling of what it's like to do it. We want to keep that going in perpetuity, and we don't even want to change it that much. So most of where that innovation comes in, it's how easy can we make your experience on the mountain? Can we make it so when you show up, you go right to the lift, you go right through a gate, you hop on the chair, and you're on that mountain faster than you ever could in the past. And I think that's what our innovation is about. It's from the moment somebody says, I want to go skiing and snowboarding, to the moment they get to the top of that lift, we have made that process as seamless and as easy as possible to really break down those barriers of where or how many people that can do this amazing activity. So I think that's something where we're, every level of that we're thinking about as an industry. And I think I'll even take it to make you kind of shift to a topic that I love some is innovation and safety as well. We are constantly looking at what we can do better from a safety standpoint. I mean, it's initially recognizing that, hey, yeah, we're all going down the hill on one or two pieces of equipment, and there's certainly a chance something that can happen to you when you're participating in that type of activity. Something as simple as I twisted my knee to something potentially much more serious. We know that can happen out there, but we're very focused on how do we make it, as safe as we possibly can for our guests, because we want everybody to be able to enjoy this. So I think you're going to see innovation and safety, and even innovation from the standpoint of already using what we have that's existing. I have seen a tremendous amount of articles lately on restraint bar use. I'm not quite sure even where it's coming from, but it's out there, and I frankly am happy to see it because it's a culture change we need to make in our industry, and we at NSA are right now working very hard on how we are going to do that and do that as an industry together.
What is the state of restraint bar requirements across the country? Because in the East, I haven't been on a lift that hasn't had one in decades. In the West, I do remember being on a lift. There was skiing with my wife and my young son at the time. I think if it was at Big Sky, and there was no restraint bar, and it was a super windy day, and of course it's three of us, and it was a double chair, and the question is who goes with who. And so I I went with my son and hung on to him for dear life, and my wife just clung to the center bar on the other chair, and she said I will never do that again. Just a funny anecdote, but is are restraint bars required in all 50 states at this point, or 39
No,
that
they're
have ski
not.
areas?
Yeah, they're not. And if you're talking anecdotes, when I was 6, actually, I fell out of a chair from like 15 feet, probably because I was being a squirmy kid and my mom tried to hang on to me. And anyway, I came out of it just fine, but it does highlight this is something we have
Yeah.
to think about. The requirements for use of them or even having them is very limited. I think I get my numbers mixed up here on it's like I think it's 7 states that require their use legally, so you have to use them, and a lot of that's a guest requirement. You got to use it if it's there, and so the number of states with that requirement to use is very small. It is more in the Northeast. More of those are focused there. So what we've seen is that our challenge we have right now is the inconsistency of use that we've got where it's 80% or more in the Northeast really considered part of the process, and then you look at other parts of the country and from that usage it drops off significantly to everywhere else is under 50%, and even as low as say 10%, depending on where you are. And again, there's regional differences. They haven't been required in terms of putting them on chairs until 2017. So if you build a lift after 2017, you have to have them on there per the ANSI requirements, or if you're refurbishing. So if you're moving it, buying a used lift, those have to have them as well. So, we've got chairlifts out there in this country that are much older than that, in part because they can be. I mean, the older chairlifts can last quite some time. So it's about how do we make sure that, hey, when there is a restraint bar on a chair, how do we help people understand that it's a safe decision to use them? Because we really have this interesting culture where people think, one, it's not cool. It's not cool to put the bar down. And you've got people out there like my own kids that wouldn't know what to do on a chair that didn't have one because that's how they grew up, and the ski area they go to, every chair has one. So we have to bring this together as an industry, and we do need our guests to make a cultural shift, because everybody in Europe and Canada doesn't understand what the heck we're doing here because it's part of what they do.
Yeah. Um, uh, Safety, across the board, whether it's, and I guess you have statistics on this, where is the issue of injury or accident occur most, and is it on the chair, or is it two skier slash boarder collisions? Is it, or a skier slash boarder collision with a unmovable object? Um, they're all different categories, and I know you put out the safety code as the organization, and the recent revision includes a couple of new things, including don't ski or board while impaired, and I forget. Oh, if you are involved in an accident, stick around and give your name to.
Stick around.
Don't no not hit and run. But there are a variety of things that can be done to enhance safety in every one of those sort of situations. So is lift safety the primary focus, and why is it, if it is?
It's not the primary focus. It's just, I think the way I look at it is, um, you know, I think more, like going down a mogul run, the chances of you doing something to yourself are probably, that's a possibility, but we're not going to fix that. We're not going to change that. So we try to look at, okay, where can we have the most impact? And when I look at lift safety and downhill safety a little bit differently, and that we are going to attack them in different ways. If you start with chairlift safety, uh, the number of incidents, considering the number of lift rides, is actually extremely low. It's one of the safest forms of transportation. It's meant to simply be a point A to point B. It's not like a roller coaster where the excitement of your day is on the ride. Ours is really meant to be transportation and good conversation. And so we do take that very seriously, that we are teaching people how to do it, and that they need to do it responsibly, but it's a different aspect. So we want to, but at the same day, we are educating them. We have to educate them on how to do it, the best way to do it, and just count on them to follow all those rules. So we're constantly evaluating, how do we teach them and how do we make it the best for them. And so again, limited number of incidents, but I will say a lot more publicity and a lot more eyes on it when somebody slips off, if they're hanging from a chair. We don't ever like to see that.
Right.
That's not how it's supposed to happen. On the downhill side of things, education is number one. I mean, that's where because what we want as an industry is, we want you to get off at the top of that chair and have a sense of freedom. Like, we're not trying to constrain you too much. So we want you to get off there and have this knowledge base of how you get down to the bottom in the right way that's safe for you and for everyone else. So that's why we believe education is so important, because we can't control people when they're on the mountain. But we just want them to make good decisions. So everything we do, from your responsibility code and everything we do around that, whether it's videos, signage, it's that that notification you get when you buy your ticket or your pass that says, hey, here's a few things to take a look at for this season that's going to keep you safe and everybody else on the mountain safe. We take so much pride in that as an organization, as an industry, that education piece, because we don't ever want to take away that freedom that you have when you get off the top of the chair.
It's an interesting perspective. I come from a ski racing background, and ski racing safety has evolved tremendously since when I was racing as a kid and to today, right? So B-netting and lining a hill with B-net to protect racers from going off into the trees and hitting a tree. Of late, There's something called the Clean Hill Initiative, where course workers and the like shouldn't leave drills stuck in the snow for a racer to come along and hit the thing. Same with rakes or shovels or what have you, the other equipment, to keep it outside of the fences if possible. Those are initiatives that I think, that's a very small segment of, skiing and boarding. But, I think just like automotive manufacturers learn from F1 racing, there's a trickle down effect in terms of technology and advancements. That's what happens in ski racing oftentimes, right? They're going to have the latest and greatest for the World Cup ski racers, and that technology and trickles down into equipment for recreational skiers. I imagine some of the safety ideas, from those more competitive events trickle down into ski areas and they adopt them in some way or another. I don't know if I can't think of an example, but I have seen trails lined with A net or B net occasionally when there's a steep cliff on the side of the catwalk or what have you.
Well, I mean, one of the best things about safety at ski areas is it's shared across all departments. I mean, that's, y- any single person that works at a ski area, I can't think of a department where safety isn't some aspect of their job in some form or another. And so it really is about how do our ski areas build a culture around that. So, the race department thinks to themselves, hey, we have this new idea. I've heard about this other safety issue we had on that other part of the mountain. Maybe we can address it with this thing that we discovered, and hopefully creating that sharing across our resorts. But yeah, it's just it's such an important piece of what we do, and I think most people don't always realize that. I mean, what happens at 4 p.m. when the ski area closes to what happens again at 9 a.m. when you get there. The amount of things that take place from a safety, the things that ski patrol pulls out, has to move for groomers, put back. You get 2 feet of snow. How does the mountain get reset after that? There's so much work that goes into that, and it truly is 100% about guest safety.
Terrific. So as a wrap up, what else would you like a listener to know about, NSAA and its initiatives, or, the behind the scenes work as the recreational skier puts their boots on in the lodge, hopefully, and and rides the lift with the safety bar down?
Exactly. I think that I don't know that the public really understands how much is going on behind the scenes. Like I said, I remember when I was shortly into Ski California, I wanted to do this video project where we called it like From 4 to 9. And it was going to be this, I don't know how long, I can't remember. We never quite got it there, and it went through different ideas, but it was, how do we show the public what goes on behind the scenes? And I think you see more of that actually with, with the, video technology and, GoPro cameras and things like that, that we can go out there as ski areas and really show the guest actually what happens. But it's that we are part of that behind the scenes effort that, I cringe when I read stuff about, ski areas don't care about safety or their profits over safety. And I'm like, man, that could not be further from the truth. Like, there's no place that I've experienced that, because, no ski area wants anything. They want the guest to have a great experience. Sure, that like every business, that doesn't always happen every time, because things happen or decisions are made that didn't work. And you got to try it and fix it. And I think we actually, as an industry, if you look at how we have operated over the years, we are that. Like, hey, like right now, we're in this discussion about, okay, we did all these things with season passes, and now we have expensive day tickets. Where's that in between thing? What do we do for people that don't want to buy a pass, but also don't even necessarily want to buy a day ticket? And now I see us as an industry answering that question. So we do figure things out over time, but just having an understanding that there is um, this behind the scenes effort to make skiing and snowboarding as safe as it can be, as fun as it can be, and something that lasts well into the future. That is an ongoing everyday thing, whether it's January or July. And so hopefully people can understand that, and that we at NSAA, that's what we want. We're all skiers and snowboarders, and we want the sport to endure and continue to get better.
Terrific. Well, with that, I want to thank you. It's been a fun conversation for me. Hopefully the listener thinks so as well. We'll find out soon enough, but I appreciate your time, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks for listening to Fresh Corduroy. If this episode gave you a better sense of what's happening behind the scenes at ski areas, or changed the way you think about the business and the future of the sport, I'd love to hear what stood out to you. Feel free to leave a comment or share your perspective. And if you're enjoying these conversations, please consider following the podcast and sharing it with someone who cares about skiing and where it's headed. Theme music for the show is by Eric Zolan. I'm Craig Zolan. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Fresh Corduroy.